of the game. What am I going for? And it's a question that I used to ask all the time, especially when my father used to force me to go to the practice because, I grew up doing judo from a very, very young age, And then little by little, as I got older, as I got more independent, as I started developing my own hopes, dreams, and goals, going to the gym became more than something that was forced onto me, but something that I absolutely loved. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Shintaro Higashi Show. Today we're going to do an episode where it's like a drive with me to practice. I'm actually driving to the dojo myself. So I kind of wanted to talk about what to be thinking about, what you should be going through when you are driving to the gym. So here we go. First and foremost, thank you to our sponsors, Jason, Levon, and Elijah. You guys are amazing. HigashiBrand.com. Obviously, look at this hat. You can buy that hat. It is amazing. I love it. Yeah, we are headed to the dojo, and I kind of wanted to give you some tips about that. When I go to the gym, I'm always thinking about what I'm going to do at the gym. And I'm sure like most influencers, most like self-help people talk about this, so you guys probably already know about it, but setting the intention is such a big part of the game. What am I going for? And it's a question that I used to ask all the time, especially when my father used to force me to go to the practice because, I grew up doing judo from a very, very young age, And then little by little, as I got older, as I got more independent, as I started developing my own hopes, dreams, and goals, going to the gym became more than something that was forced onto me, but something that I absolutely loved. And from that point on, it was like, why do I love it so much? My goals, going to the gym or the dojo, at 20 is very different than when I'm 30, than I'm, 40 now, right? So over the years, the goals have sort of shifted, but always has something to do, for me, with self-improvement, So first and foremost, maybe you're a competitor, right? You're 25 years old, you're actively on the scene, and you want to make a championship, or you want to make a national team, or whatever it is. If that's the case, you have to kind of go into it with the mindset like, all right, I need to work on these things. I'm going to dedicate a small percentage of the time to these drills, because if I look at my game holistically, these are the gaps in my game, I need to fill it. These are the things I'm good at, I want to double down and sharpen those things, Those days of athletes just kind of going in, flying solo, just doing the drills that their coach tells them to, and then not really thinking about it, I feel like those days are kind of gone. We are sort of in this new attention economy where people are making content all the time. You could get on Instagram and follow some of the highest level grapplers on the planet, and then you kind of get an insight into what they're thinking, what they're talking about, all this stuff, and it becomes more and more important as money flows into grappling. So we were definitely in a blessed time, and then once you look at all these guys who are kind of in this mindset, right, of setting the intention and going to practice with intention, we could learn a lot from that, First and foremost, like back in the day, like you had to have access to those champions. You have to be at the same gym, or you have to be friends with them in order for you to kind of access their minds. But now, because of YouTube and stuff like this, you can kind of just follow them on Instagram and such, and this is partially one of those mediums when you're podcasting and listening to me doing these episodes, and you kind of enter my mind, so to speak, Speaking of which, you could join us on Patreon now. I've been kind of making an extra effort to make the perks very special for you guys. We're going to do sort of different tiers and perks, one of them being, the group chat, the Discord access. That's always kind of been there. But I want to start doing video calls once a week with everyone and field everyone's questions and doing one-to-one mentorships and things like that. So all those things are really coming. So come check out my Patreon link down below. It's going to be really, really cool. I bet you guys are going to have a great time. People reach out to me all the time, whether it's by DMs or emails, or I got your number from so-and-so, and it's very difficult for me to stay on top of all that, but I want to be a little bit more organized with the way that I interact with the community. So Patreon is the answer. Also, thank you very much, Drew. He is the sponsor as well on Patreon, Hakuin.ai. If you have business, you have churn, Hakuin.ai, check it out. Returning back to sort of setting the intention, you know, so that's like with this, if you're like a 25-year-old person, you know, you don't have to be like limited by age, but you could be a 35-year-old masters competitor, right? But if you're a competitor, you're trying to get good in order to win, right? So that's a completely different ball game than someone that just wants to go to the dojo for getting into shape, for instance, you know. And if that's the case, you have to sort of set the intention of how you're going to get into shape through judo. You know, and a lot of the times people think go in there and work as hard as possible, but you have to take into account the risk involved with getting injured. Because if you get injured, you're not going to be able to work out, therefore you're going to get fatter, right? So these things, you have to kind of weigh out the risk-reward factors depending on your goal, you know? If your goal is to work out and get fit as much as possible, it actually is better not to do any randori and just kind of do a lot of drills, right? Maybe even during randori time, I mean, it depends on what your skill levels are, you know, pick a spot on the mat sometimes and just kind of drill, right? So you can kind of get that constant burn, that low intensity, steady state thing going. And it has to sort of fit into your workout profile of the week. You know, if you're sitting around all week, not doing much because you work in an office, and you want to get in shape and you want to use grappling to get in shape, and then you almost do no cardio, then of course, this is a great time for you to do cardio, you know? But if you're already in the gym lifting 3 days a week and you're getting your 10,000 steps in, now all of a sudden, you're not playing the same game as the guy that's sitting in an office and not working out at all. You know what I mean? So setting the intention before going into the dojo is huge, especially if you're trying to get in shape. You know what I mean? And for a lot of you guys who are listening who just wants to go for the sense of community, to feel good and enjoy, like that's completely okay too. You know, I tell my guys all the time, like, you know, you're coming in here, right? Bring your best attitude. And with those guys, like when you're going into practice, right? You want to think about your partners. You want to think about your friends, and you know, that's a different thing, right? If you're going to do that, you got to make sure your partner's going. Like sometimes I do that too. I go to the Essential and then it's like for BJJ, and then it's like, ah, man, you know, I'm not feeling like training today. I just kind of get a workout in, that's it. I'm not really training. You know, my knee's busted. I missed some of these guys. You know, I've been kind of cooped up working all week. I'm going to go to the dojo, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school. In that case, I'm just going to call some of my boys, you know, hey, Pat, you training today? Hey, Jay, you know, you working out today? And then I'll make sure my guys are there, so I kind of just hang out and then see them and be refreshed in that social way. You know what I mean? So the number one thing is asking yourself what you want to get out of the practice today, you know, and your goals shift, right? Goals shift. And even if you are training very hard for something, you know, you want to listen to your body and say, all right, my knees hurt today, you know. You can't just walk into practice and let just like the energy of the room take you, because, oh man, I'm in the dojo, these guys want to work out, these guys want to go for hard randori, these guys want to go for hard rolls, and now all of a sudden you're swept away in that energy and you forget your knee is busted. And now all of a sudden you can get potentially injured and make things worse. So, you know, I'll give you an example. I'm going to the dojo today, my knee is hurt. Brian Glick is teaching a noon class today, and then I have judo at night. My goal today, walking into the gym, is to do some jiu-jitsu with Brian in a way that it doesn't hurt my knee. So maybe some deep half, waiter guard stuff. These things don't really hurt my knee. If I go butterfly sweep and then lift with my left knee, it's going to hurt my knee. I'm going to be in so much pain. So work specifically on these positions that I haven't really sharpened with my limitations of my knee, and also to get a good workout in, a cardio, like a low intensity cardio for me today. So I'm trying to get shape for the summer. This is a great opportunity, this Wednesday noon class, to burn a lot of low intensity, steady state calories. Not going hard, not being explosive, not like going hard sprinting rounds, but to stay out there for 5 rolls straight, 6 minutes apiece, 30 minutes straight. I'm just going to kind of constantly be moving through deep half, waiter guard, deep half, waiter guard, over underpass, you know, trying to keep my left knee off the floor. You know what I mean? And in order to craft this kind of a training, I have to be very mindful. and I have to be very selective. So there's some guys in the room who are my students who go really hard, and if I can't trust them to kind of protect my knee and then meet my goals of training today, I'm not going to work out with them, because one, it's unnecessary risk for me. Two, I'm not meeting my own personal goals. And three, I'm not teaching that class. So I'm going there selfishly to work out with Brian Glick teaching the class. So I'm allowed to say, you know what, I'm not working out with you, I'm not working out with you. Now, if I was teaching the class, my whole dynamic with the students will be a little bit different, right? I'll be fielding questions. What are your needs? Figuring out what you want. What are you working on? Half guard. Okay, let's go half guard, top or bottom. You choose. You know, I'm working on half guard bottom. All right, fine. Sure. Let's get you in some of these positions and do some live rolls within that context of, right? Because you're going for this, because you're going for that, because your goals are X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? So that's my intentions for the noon class. And then for the evening class, you know, I got a pot of guys who are trying to compete. You know, I have some beginners in the room, so I gotta cater to those guys. And it's just like kind of a regular average day. You know, it's a little bit different from me on a workout standpoint. And you guys are mostly probably listening from a working out standpoint. But yeah, even as a sensei, you know, if your goal is to build your business, you know, build your dojo, and, you know, you look around and there's no white belts. If there's a white belt in the room, you have to cater to that person. And this is really advice not to anybody, but to myself. You know, because it's very easy for me to, and I think anybody, to just kind of bullshit with the people you like the most. And naturally, you're going to like the people who've been coming, who are aligned with their goals, who are smart, who are working hard. You want to help those guys. You know, not the guy that just walks in, it's like, hey, I'm here for the free trial, you know, I want to get in shape, whatever it is. And then it's like, oh boy, you know. And I know that's not a great mentality, but you have to set your intentions going in, that if your goal today is to sign up X number of members who do trials, then you have to cater to those people and you have to talk to them after training, right? This is advice mostly for myself, because a lot of times I don't do this, I neglect this kind of stuff, you know. So that is that. Setting your intentions. You're probably driving to the dojo now. I'm sure, you know, you might have feelings going in, you know, and there's a lot of things to be feeling going to training, and I know I've certainly had a lot of these feelings myself. Whether it's fatigue, that's a big one. You know, fatigue's one where you had a long day at work, you're driving to the dojo and you're like, oh my God, you know, I'm so tired. Maybe you're not even considering going to the dojo. Maybe you're on your way and you're like, maybe I'll just pull into that drive-through and, you know, go get a cheeseburger and go home. And you know what? I've been there. You know, I've been there many, many times. And for those guys, I tell you, you just got to get there. Really get there, you know? And if you're fatigued, you kind of have to get your body going first and foremost. So you have to have, I don't want to say a proper warm-up, because everyone gives that advice. You got to get a proper warm-up in. Okay, what does that even mean? You know? You have to sort of titrate up the intensity. Because for me personally, if I'm fatigued, don't feel like going to practice, I go in there and I'm like, all right, guys, do this, do that, and I start ripping it, and then I start off in a way where I don't feel very optimal. It's very hard for me to ramp it up. The worst is if we start with the Uchikomi, this and that, I'm not feeling it, I do a hard randori round, first round with someone that beats me up. Boy, is it a tough rest of the practice, because you have to recover from that mentally, and now all of a sudden you're taking a beating the whole training session, and you're just contemplating, yo, what am I doing this for, you know? And I'll give you a very specific example. When I used to live at the National Training Center with Jimmy Pedro and crew, we used to do these 6 a.m. practices every day. And some days I'd wake up and be like groggy, you know, 5:30, like, oh man, I shouldn't have stayed up and watched that movie. You know, oh my God, I had a very salt-heavy meal last night. I feel bloated. I don't feel like training, but I'm gonna go because I'm a professional. And then, you know, my training partner at the time was Travis Stevens. And then, you know, he's feeling great. He's coming at me. He's like in my face, grinding his head and then slamming me. And then, you know, now from there, it's just a very, very difficult uphill battle, right? I'm almost like sort of limp, you know what I mean? And I gotta like force myself to like get into that mindset. And what helped a lot of the times when I was in that place was to go with someone a little bit less skilled, a little bit smaller and lighter, so I could kind of, you know, like a slump buster almost, you know what I mean? I needed some of those guys to kind of get back into the game. But even then, you know, you're so deflated from that first round that it's very difficult to come back from. So setting your intentions going to practice, recognizing that you feel fatigued, and then not putting yourself in a place where the first or second randori, you're going with the killer, and then you have a nice easy ramp up into the intense rounds, helps a lot. You know, and sometimes you just go in there and start blasting away. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you feel great. You know, you got a good night's rest, your nutrition's been on all week. But a lot of the times when you recognize and setting the intentions for your training, you're driving in and you could recognize, yeah, you know, I'm a little bit fatigued today. You know, and if you're a little bit older like me, oh, my kid didn't sleep well last night, he had a nightmare, I had to take the kid to school, she forgot her lunch, I had to go back and bring it back in. So it's been kind of a rough day. You know, I'm gonna go to the dojo today and then slowly ramp it up. Maybe the first 2 randori or 5 rolls, go with a very low skilled person, you know, and do a flow roll. And then little by little, all of a sudden, you got your blood pumping. You know, your first 2 randori or rolls are very fruitful. And now you feel great. And now you're like, all right, I am freaking ready. And now you've just had a great training session. All right. So that's how I would deal with fatigue. You know, a lot of the times, like, you have a good first 20 minutes of practice, you can kind of overcome that fatigue and you feel great. You know, unless you're like really, really sick with the flu or something, 90% of the time when you're fatigued, you can beat that with the first 20 minutes of practice with the right mindset, with the right ramp up, right? So that's one of my advice to you if you're dealing with fatigue right now. If you're dealing with fear going into practice, that's a whole nother bag of shit, right? Why you're fearful is the question. And sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it's the guy at the gym that's kind of singling you out, pounding you. You know, you've been doing judo for 6 months, and this guy's been doing judo for 2 years, and, you know, he's slamming you every time he sees you. Like, that's not your fault, you know? And then if that's the case, you got to speak up and then talk to somebody, you know? And if you can't talk to your instructor, talk to me. You know, sign up for my Patreon. We have group chats for that kind of stuff where you could vent. You could kind of set up video calls with me, do one-to-one mentorships, and I can help you guide through those sort of obstacles if you're feeling fear. But when you're feeling fear going into training, you kind of have to do a little bit of a deep dive. You know, it's not as simple as face your fears, just go in there and it'll get better. And, you know, it's not that simple, right? You got to kind of figure out what the root of that fear is, you know? And sometimes, you know, it's something simple like, oh, I just don't want to look like a buffoon out there, you know, like going for throws, or if we're doing forward rolls down the middle, I don't want people seeing me doing, you know, ugly rolls. You know, that, it's in your head. You know, it's in your head. Most people, 95% of the time, I'll tell you, the people in the room care about themselves, right? So, you know, I got taken down the other day in front of a lot of people. And it was very embarrassing, but, you know, no one remembers it today. You know, seriously, like, it was kind of a lose-lose situation that I was put in at a special workout. I have a torn meniscus, and I didn't really want to do randori with anyone tough. You know what I mean? But this kid called me out. He's like, yo, let's go. And he was very excited to meet me and train with me. And I was like, yo, just so you know, my left knee, I have a torn meniscus. And then he went for a coach on that knee. I'm not even mad at it. Of course he's going to go for that, you know? He's young, he's hungry, he wants to take me down, I get it. Normally, these are sort of the fears a lot of people have, like, oh, I don't want to get taken down in front of everybody, whatever it is. And yes, it's embarrassing, especially if you're a legend in the game like me, wearing a red and white belt, getting taken down by someone who's under 150 pounds. But at the end of the day, everyone's thinking about themselves in there. I gotta train, I gotta do this, I gotta work out, I have to work out with that guy. No one probably remembers it except that kid that took me down. He's probably so happy. God bless you. But yeah, the fear, you gotta think about it, be introspective about it, and then figure out where that fear is coming from. You know, not to sound like, you know, Freudian, this, that, you know, psychotherapist, but, you know, a lot of the times, a lot of these fears going to practice is the way your parents spoke to you. right? And for me, I know I carried a lot of like, oh my God, you're so weak, you gotta lift. I can't believe you can't deadlift this or bench this. You know, you're not working hard enough, you're not training hard enough, you're physically so, like these kinds of things that I would get into with my dad affected me for a long time. And it was a primary driver in me working hard and getting big and strong and fast and all that stuff. And you know, a lot of the times that ended up doing a lot of good for me, but doing a lot of bad for me as well, you know? And even if you have that kind of a thing, right? Whether, you know, it's your dad or your mom or a certain thinking that you have about yourself, with the proper guidance, you could channel it in the right way. You know, for me, it was like I thought I was physically weak and I could never be strong enough, you know? So I would go to the gym and deadlift, you know, obsessively. My goal was to deadlift 600 pounds. So I'll relentlessly just go to the gym, try to lift heavy and get strong. And I just knew that if I got the 600 pound deadlift, I would be stronger than most of the guys in my category. But thinking back to it now, whether I could deadlift 400 or 600 pounds, it doesn't really affect my judo that much. In fact, trying to deadlift 600 pounds, my max was 565. I hurt myself many, many times. That took me away from the judo room because I couldn't train in judo, my main thing. So a lot of the times it hurt me. But without that mindset of like, hey, I'm not strong enough, I have to get it, that negative sort of driver, I probably wouldn't have lifted hard to get as strong as I possibly could have. So it's sort of good and bad, and you kind of have to understand where these things are coming from and then kind of manipulate them into a driving force for you, right? The way your parents spoke to you about something, you know, about athletics, whatever it is, you can't change that anymore. You know, it's a part of you. You got to recognize it and then guide it. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not a therapist, just so you guys know. You know, it's a little bit of a disclaimer. But yes, so fear, you kind of have to dig down deep. You know, talking to people, very helpful. You know, if you have really, really, you know, fearful, messed up mental health stuff, obviously don't talk to your sensei about it. Go seek professional help. Like, I'm not really qualified to give you mental health guidance. You know what I mean? I'm a judo teacher, for God's sake, you know? So, you know, and I get these messages all the time. Sensei, you know, these are the issues that are happening in my life. I was like, yo, I can't help you, man. I'm not qualified for that. If you want to learn how to overcome your fear of break falling, I got you. If you want to learn how to do Uchimata, I got you, you know? But like, outside of that, you know, and remember, I'm a judo teacher, okay? But, you know, for minor stuff, dojo stuff, life stuff, you know, I can kind of help. You know, my mentorship program is up and coming, you know, on Patreon, so definitely check that out. All right, so we have fatigue, fear going into training. Yeah, skill acquisition stuff, you know, that's another one. Here we go. This is a good one for me to talk about. You have to be able to do judo mindfully in order to give yourself feedback, right? If you're going in and you're just doing the training and you can't remember any of your live rolls, there's a little bit of a problem. That means you're in full survival mode. Survival mode, self-preservation mode. So those two things together is not going to give you the mind space to be able to actively and consciously guide your training, because you're thinking about not getting hurt. You're not taking risks. You're not trying to develop skill. You're thinking about, oh my God, this guy's going to hurt me, right? So learning to go with the right people to where you could mindfully do judo. All right, what's going on here? Am I winning in position? Am I hand fighting correctly? What are my gaps? What do I need to work on? Right? Now all of a sudden, you could get somewhere, because after training, you could give that some thought. When you're going into training, you're setting the intention, and then you're saying, okay, I'm not feeling too good today. I'm going to do this to kind of ramp up my training. Now all of a sudden, I'm feeling great. All right, I'm not just trying to get a workout in. I've been working on my Uchimata for months. I want to work on getting that winning position first and then going for the throws. I didn't throw anybody Uchimata. Okay, so why? How? You know, was I able to get to a good dominant position? Yes, no, maybe, right? Yes, I was able to get to a good dominant position. All right, was I only going for Uchimata, or was I setting it up? Was I throwing in feints? Was I doing some complementary back attacks, front attacks, mixing it up, right? Or was I just hesitating, right? So all these different things you can kind of look at if you're not just doing full-blown survival / hesitation, / mode, right? You're just living in fear. You're just actively there. You feel great. You've overcome your fatigue. Now you're kind of in the mix of the training, trying to develop this skill, and you're not very fearful. Now you can mindfully be in the training, and then if you're mindful, you're going to be able to recall that roll or round, and then you can go home and think about it, right? So maybe if you're already on this path to training, and this is something that I distinguish all the time, there's training and there's working out. Working out is just going in for one shot and then going to the gym, doing everything, feeling good. Going to the judo workout, I do one workout, it's like, all right, I do some uchikomi, I do some randori, call it a day. Training is when you string those workouts together for a purpose, for a goal that you're trying to achieve. If I'm training to get shredded for the summer, and that's my number one goal right now, get shredded for the summer. I'm 191 pounds, I feel great. This training today that I'm going to right now for the dojo fits my training regimen. I have a regimen. I went to the gym yesterday, I blasted away on the upper body. Today, all I'm trying to do with grappling is to get my cardio in and develop some things while protecting my knee, maybe some deep path, way to guard stuff, right? That's it. That's my goal. You know what I mean? And then I'm in there, not dealing with a guy that's going berserk trying to kill me. And we get visitors all the time that are like, oh my God, Higashi, I came to train with you. I want to dethrone you. I want to work out with you. I want to see how good you actually are, right? Working out with that guy is not going to be aligned with my goal. And I'm 40, and I'm wise enough to say, fuck that. I'm not working out with you. Maybe till like last year I would have done it, but right now I have a torn meniscus, so no thanks to that. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what's up. I'm gonna go with the guys that I trust, so once I'm out of that training at night when I'm driving home, I could recall the deep path stuff, right? And I did this last week already, so I'm developing knowledge, and it's having a compounded factor because I'm adding on top of the things. I'm giving myself feedback. I'm thinking about where and what went wrong. You know what I mean? So the interplay between like a deep path, way to guard, over underpass, deep path, way to guard, over underpass, and cycling through these things and understanding the physical cues to when to go or create this motion, while protecting this elbow on the inside. These kinds of things that I want to train. And I am limited, because from that deep path, I want to be able to wedge my foot underneath and elevate, but I can't do that right now. So I'm going to keep that piece sort of on the side to when my knee does recover, right? I'm going to add that element in, but that's coming later. You see what I mean? So this is training, and for me, it's getting in shape and then working on this position, And because I'm not in a self-preservation, working out with the crazy guy that's trying to take my head off, or, Gunji wants to work out with me and then blast me into the freaking universe, right? Like, I could kind of actively be present, mindful, not have to rely on my A game whatsoever, burn my calories, and then after training, I could think about it, recall it, and then develop my game even better. So when my knee gets better and I'm shredded at 180 in the summer, right? Now all of a sudden, I could put all the deep path stuff sort of in the back of the game, back of my mind, and then call it up when I need it. I don't have to try to force that position at all. If it's there, I'll take it and I'll go for it. And I would have been a master at it by then. You see what I mean? So these are the kind of intentional things that I'm kind of thinking about driving into training, And then of course, sometimes driving down, I wonder if this guy's going into practice, that guy's going into practice, and the social side of it too, right? I haven't seen this guy in a while, I haven't seen Junie in a while, he's awesome, I gotta get back in the room, that kind of a thing, so yeah, set your intentions, with your goals in mind, take a nice account of how you're feeling, and then strategize and go from there. But if you're in full-blown crisis mode when you're doing rounds or rolls, you know, you're not doing enough mindfulness training to be able to extract enough information to recall on to give yourself feedback after the training, right? So once you do this kind of a thing, I think your training will get a lot better. Thank you very much, guys, for listening for this all the way through. Like I said, join us on Patreon. You could chat with me, video calls, all that stuff. It's coming. I'm already actively working on it, but definitely check it out. The first tier is already kind of set. It's just accessing, you know, me in a chat through Discord and all that. Thank you very much to the sponsors that currently are on it. And yeah, have a great practice, guys. And if you really, really like this, you could save it so you could kind of listen to it on your way to practice. Hope it was helpful. None of it was scripted. Literally winged it. You know, as you can tell, I'm in my car. I'm driving to training right now. I'm about to get there. So, you know, it's 9:30. It's a little bit early. You know, I want to make some videos and then training for me. So, you know, training for me, training for you, training for everybody, right? So check it out, ShintaroHigashi.com. We have stuff coming, very exciting announcements. Patreon, like I said, join us, chat with me, video with me, one-to-one mentorship with me. I will see you guys very, very soon.